thousands of people take to the streets. They are hate marches.
This is a religion where in any state in the world where this religion is dominant, I would be executed.
Arresting an Englishman for flying a Union Jack.
But you know what you can do is put a flag for an Islamic State.
Football hooligans being in town. This was all about the far right.
I didn't come out till I was 28. Do you know what I mean?
There is just so much wrong with this video and this deranged lesbian. So slimy and gross.
You don't want plus-size people to feel confident when we did not make the problem in the first place.
You can eat all the McDonald's you want. It's not going to change it.
Once your coconuts are grown, it is time to start producing milk.
Raise the voice of Palestine! Allahu Akbar!
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Jack Jewell podcast, a show where we talk about all the crazy things going on in the world, particularly LGBT discourse, from the perspective of a moderate gay man in the UK. I want to give a big thank you because my channel has really been growing a lot in the past week, just reached 4K subs, which I did not expect to happen so soon. And my recent collab with Brad Palumbo is my most viewed podcast. And then our non-binary TikTok reaction video, which if you've not seen it, you need to, is my most viewed video so far as a whole. So really pleased about that. Yeah, I just feel so excited. I feel like something big is coming, you know, and it's a nice feeling. I guess you'll notice my setup is a bit different. My camera's a bit different. That is because on Saturday, I had my phone stolen right out of my hand while I was walking on Oxford Street in central London. Took out my phone to check travel directions. And then before I know it, this guy on a bike has swiped it out of my hand. So it was very stressful. And luckily I had my MacBook on me, so I was able to just rush into a pret-a-manger and lock it remotely, report it as lost. It was a very stressful experience. And with our general election coming up, it has really brought to light this topic of petty crime and how, if you want to call that petty, and how the police are just doing F all to be able to stop this, whether that's their fault or just a funding thing. I made a comment about it on my community tab that if our police in London can't even combat knife crime, then how are they going to combat crimes such as that? Knife crime is a huge problem on the streets. They're not solving that. So as if they're going to solve people stealing phones on bikes. And this is a huge problem. It's growing. And it's the second time it has happened to me. Luckily, my phone is insured and it's what I use to film everything, which is why I'm using a lower quality camera today from my MacBook. Let me know if this has happened to any of you because it is distressing and I was a bit shaken up straight away. Now today, before I launch into a topic I haven't treaded into too much on Islam, make sure you like the video, comment down below. And if you don't know what to comment, please just put a diamond symbol to represent you support Jack Jewell. Every comment supports the algorithm, which is really helpful. And I've decided to engage a bit more with my audience. I'm going to be reading out some comments from the previous podcast episode. And also, if you leave a review on Apple Podcasts, I will 100% be reading that out. Any comment with a super chat will also automatically be read out. Focus this week is on Islam backlash in the UK and London. And I want to preface this by saying I'm still learning a lot about this, and I want my podcast to not just be able to be a place where I can just spout all my opinions, but also explore topics that I'm still making my mind up on, or perhaps I think it would be great if you guys engaged with that too and let me know your thoughts on it. What we're going to talk about today is a protest that happened in London last weekend led by Tommy Robinson and Lawrence Fox. So Lawrence Fox is the leader of the Reclaim Party. Tommy Robinson is sort of a notorious political figure, I suppose you might call him, who gets labeled as far right, who gets labeled as racist. I need to know more about Tommy Robinson as a whole. Perhaps that is true. So I'm not defending him entirely in this video, but I just want to look specifically at what happened last weekend from that lens. There was a protest in London, which was sort of in retaliation to a lot of the pro-Palestine protests we've been having, which have been causing political unrest, causing Jewish people to feel unsafe, making just your everyday person uncomfortable because of some of the antithetical to Western values, things that have been being said, as well as acts of violence. And this was a protest in retaliation to the police being biased, having a two-tier system, they call it. So not being hard enough on those communities in their protests, whereas when there is a pro-British protest, cracking down on them much, much harder. and ultimately trying to shed light on the extremism happening in this country, the growing extremism from, I think particularly, to be honest, it is the Islam community. As a country of tolerance and secularism, we allow freedom of belief, which I totally believe in. But the problem is we can be so tolerant and so understanding that we're not doing enough to address a sliver of the pie when it comes to Islam. Obviously, it's not everyone by any means. There were a number of headlines in regards to this protest, which were trying to obviously portray it in a certain light. This one says, Tommy Robinson leads football hooligan march in London demanding resignation of Met chief Mark Rowley. So you see straight away they are calling it a hooligan march, whatever that, a football hooligan march. This next article says, Tommy Robinson marches lead anti-Muslim chant in London demo. Police said intoxicated individuals with a history of violent disorder have been spotted at the event. Sky News said far-right activist Tommy Robinson organised a demonstration in central London to call out a two-tiered policing system and demand the resignation of Met Police Commissioner Mark Rowley. So they put these terms in far right, which to me is sort of Hitler level, complete white nationalist. And then they just have a statement saying that it's a demonstration to call out two-tiered policing system and demand the resignation of Met Police. So that does not denote a far right ideology, just saying that you have a problem with how the police are run. But straight away, that is skewed, right? And it's from Sky News, which is sort of a shame. Nazi Tommy Robinson mobilizes up to 5,000 in London. Nazi, the National Socialist Party, Hitler's party, is that not quite specific when it comes to their ideology and them being anti-Israeli? Police make 9 arrests as Tommy Robinson addresses crowd. Now, this article is interesting because it looks like 9 people from his protest got arrested, right? But then when you actually look into this, it turns out that the 9 youth who were arrested were actually pro-Palestine protesters who were there combating the other protest. So Tommy Robinson's protest was actually more peaceful. But then this article from The Express clearly just obfuscates the fact that it is pro-Palestine. And it's becoming more and more bizarre to me that we live in the UK, a country where we have so much freedom, freedom of belief, freedom of speech. Well, maybe not anymore. But then there's this bias towards being anti-British and labeling anyone who is, let's protect British values as far right, and then shielding the extreme Islamists. It's this whole intersectional model of that the Islam community are more oppressed than any other religions. Therefore, they get a free pass, even though, in my view, they seem to be the religion that harbor the most extreme corners within Western society, unless you're discussing perhaps a very niche, small cult in the United States or something. But when it comes to comparing it to Christianity, to Hinduism, to Sikh, to Judaism, I don't believe there's a comparison. And people who are very anti-establishment, anti-religion, they'll just say every religion has issues. And yes, that's totally true. For example, I was raised Catholic. The Catholic Church had the major scandal. It's terrible. But when it comes to Islamism, I've listened to a lot of ex-Muslims. They quite clearly say that you cannot say that all religions are equal in extremism. With Islam, they say that the doctrine of that is explicitly prone to extremism. Specifically, has doctrine that motivates people to encroach on society and convert people. And we don't see any other religion radicalizing some young people in this country and then them moving to the Middle East, to ISIS areas. We saw the story of Shamima Begum, 15 years old, several years ago. But yet, this is the religion that we can't criticize. Now, we're going to take a look at a clip from Tommy Robinson's recent documentary, which is called Lawfare, A Totalitarian State. Sheds light on Met Police two-tiered tactics, exposing discrepancies in law enforcement practices.
We'll find some Jews there. We want the Zionists, we want the blood.
What we're saying now, and I'm making it very clear so everyone understands, if those dogs come close to us again, we will see it as an act of aggression and we will kill those dogs, we'll put them down.
We saw Hamas supporters shouting death to Jews, saying that Hitler was right, calling for a genocide in Israel. They were left alone. The mainstream media deemed it a peaceful protest. The police didn't touch them.
Thousands of people take to the streets following the massacre of Jewish people, the single largest loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust, chanting for the erasure of Israel from the map. To my mind, there's only one way to describe those marches. They are hate marches.
Now, we're obviously seeing selected clips that are probably quite extreme, you know, and perhaps there are some from the other side. But I'm finding it more and more strange that I'm walking around the city that I live in Britain, and I can't walk 10 feet without seeing an Islamic State flag. It does make me uncomfortable. Now, I, of course, think it's a tragedy what's happening, and I don't understand the complexities of international war policy when it comes to whether what Israel is doing is justified or not, because while the majority of people would never want innocent civilians to be killed, especially children, and I'm one of those people, in the past, there have always been wars, but we didn't have access to the same granular detail of footage, of information from both sides, and also the polarization in general of politics now. As well as in the past, governments used to censor certain information, I think possibly to not cause panic or maybe for nefarious reasons as well. This is the first time we're this close to a war. And with the general climate of political correctness and wokeism, it's natural that people somehow feel that this war is different from all the rest. And maybe it is. But from all the interviews I've heard on the Israel-Palestine war, it sort of seems like they're quite similar to any war in history, and also different in the sense that it's not standard for your opponent to actually actively try and give aid to your side. So the Israelis have been notifying people to evacuate areas before attacking. And then there's so much misinformation or information when it comes to apparently Hamas is stopping the aid from getting to their people. Hamas is using them as human shields. They have complete disregard for their people, and they're using make Israel the enemy globally. So that's one side of the argument, and I don't know. I think even me saying I don't understand the complexities of international policy, I can already imagine the kind of people that would rip me apart for even saying that. You support genocide. No. The whole I support Palestine, you know, people I know, atheist people, agnostic people, I'm seeing posting their Instagram stories, not only about this, but about Ramadan and Eid and stuff. And I'm like, what is going on? Do you not understand that this is a religion where in any state in the world where this religion is dominant, I would be executed or put in prison, or in Iran forced to get genital surgery to become a woman. Women are subjugated. If you have a certain extreme husband, you may only be able to show your eyes in public. The whole Queers for Palestine movement, if it was queers for anti-death, if there's another way Israel can go about this without risking the lives of Israelis, then I would support that, right? Because I don't want people to die. But I'm not going to be for Palestine. I'm not going to be for Iran, for Syria, because these countries are somewhere where I couldn't even visit without being persecuted. Being Muslim does not mean you're statistically less likely to be gay. So in this country, we have many gay men probably growing up in Muslim families who are probably having a rubbish time. Many of them could be in arranged marriages with women. So I don't support that. Now, when I meet a Muslim person, am I going to treat them with kindness, dignity, respect? Yes, as long as they treat me that way. Is there an element of me that's a little bit more cautious because of perhaps they hold certain views? Yeah. And when I'm walking around in my neighborhood and I see pretty much on a weekly basis several women who can only show their eyes, am I supposed to see that as freedom of belief or the oppression of women? Because I'm far more likely to lean to the latter. Whereas if Christians try and oppress women by having an idea that a woman should be in the home, raising the family, her role is to nurture the kids, even if the woman agrees to that, and that the woman says that this is what I want, people will still say that is oppression. Then people will say a woman in a burqa, well, if it makes her happy, if that's what she wants, then, you know, she should be able to do that. And it doesn't add up having those two thoughts, because the Christian woman is undeniably more free. There's a big shopping center near where I live, and you see Muslim families there on the weekend, and the mother has to walk behind the husband in his shadow. And that does not seem like a value this country should tolerate. At the very least, you should be able to talk about it openly and say, I don't agree with that. I think it is oppressing women. And perhaps there could be a civil rights movement around that.
You cannot wave the Union Jack.
Arresting an Englishman for flying a Union Jack when there's people here literally tacitly supporting the October 7th.
Why is it that being proud of being British or American is somehow disgraceful? A society that is very tolerant and liberal, of which many people want to clearly emigrate to, is looked down upon. And what would you say Western values are, British values? Because I would say free market, freedom of belief, secularism, tolerance, patriotism, but you can't really be that anymore. So who knows if he was arrested just because he had the Union Jack flag. I'd need to know more. I do know that if someone puts one of those flags outside their window, people would not like that, especially in London. But you know what you can do is put a flag for an Islamic State outside your window. Just think about how weird that is.
You cannot preach the Christian gospel.
If you make members of the public harassment, alarm, distress, it's a criminal offence.
I'm aware of that. Yeah, so that's what we're not really doing that. What we're doing is about preaching our religion. You asked me what I've been preaching. So we've been preaching about the gospel of Jesus Christ.
And closer to home for me, you cannot work as a journalist if the government doesn't like your views or your reporting.
I'm here at work.
That this has got nothing to do with your role as a journalist.
I'm here at work.
Your presence here is causing alarm.
And you don't
think if you not leave, contact anything, I will come in and I'll make sure you.
What I saw from
your presence. Yeah, I'm sitting here having a cup of tea. It's the same thing we saw recently. Policemen speaking to this Jewish guy on the streets of London saying, we think you should leave because your presence here may alarm people.
You are quite openly Jewish. It's a pro-Palestinian march, right? I'm not accusing you of anything, but I'm worried about the reaction to your presence.
Just the presence of a Jewish person is causing harm, right?
From that demonstration, Tommy being arrested for wanting to report is a huge intrusion of police powers into journalistic freedom. He was pepper sprayed, arrested with 30 police officers, a overreach of their power on a single individual journalist that simply wanted to tell a story.
Journalism is dead. Mainstream journalism. I think it's better probably here than the US, possibly. Whether Tommy Robinson is far right or not in certain beliefs, I still think that he should be allowed to have the platform to speak as long as he's not inciting violence on people. I was outside a tube station in South London recently, and there were guys advertising the Communist Party of Britain and handing out communist newspapers. And I spoke to one of them for 10 minutes to ask why he believes in what he believes in. If you're allowed to preach far left ideology, you know, someone should be allowed to preach far right, I guess. Let people speak in plain sight. The only reason the left want to censor things is because they do know that some of these people speak with facts. As far as I've seen from these videos, he hasn't done anything wrong, in my opinion. So I'm judging it just based on this. This is a local councillor that was elected for the Green Party, which is the woke party, pretty much. This is just for a normal constituency. So it's not supposed to be anything to do with religion. And then this was his speech.
We will not be silent. We will raise the voice of Gaza. We will raise the voice of Palestine. Allahu Akbar.
Can you imagine if I got elected as a councillor and I just led with praise Jesus Christ? I mean, that would not be tolerated. And I do think that most people disagreed with that, I hope. These far right hooligans, let's take a look at what the crowd actually looked like.
Football hooligans being in town. This was all about the far right. But I mean, I'm showing you now. But look, to me, these are just normal people. Tommy Robinson supporters attend hate march. Tommy Robinson leads hundreds of football hooligans in march. Far right this and far right that.
Oh my God, far right. As far as I can see, they're just peacefully walking around. You have women. You even see some children there. Men. It's definitely not as intense and in your face as some of the Palestine protests I saw. Why don't we hear from some of the types of people that went to this march and see how far right they all are?
And I was a child victim of criminal and sexual exploitation in my hometown of Rotherham. I was just 14 years old when I met Arshad Hussain. He was 10 years older than me and already known to South Yorkshire Police for exploiting children. I was placed into foster care and made pregnant twice by him by the age of 15. At 16 years old, I made a statement to South Yorkshire Police, and unfortunately, that got ignored. I wasn't surprised because I know how corrupt the police were because of what I'd seen whilst I was being exploited. This opened the criminal investigation, not just into my abuse, but into all the cases in South Yorkshire, which is the biggest child abuse investigation in history. This was a report that showed over 1,400 children in my hometown had been abused, raped, trafficked, tortured, some even murdered. We was blamed, we was ignored, we was criminalised. The report also showed that the majority of victims were white female children, and the majority of perpetrators were Pakistani Muslim men. Thousands of children in my town were sacrificed because people were too scared that they were going to be called racist. Every single person that's here today is here because they recognise that something is going wrong with our system.
This scandal is crazy, and it is true. So in South Yorkshire, 1,400 girls were abused by grooming gangs. The abuse included gang rape, forcing children to watch rape, dousing them with petrol and threatening to set them on fire, threatening to rape their mothers and young sisters, as well as trafficking them to other towns. The failure to address the abuse was attributed to a combination of factors revolving race, class, religion, and gender. Fear that the perpetrator's ethnicity would trigger allegations of racism, contemptuous and sexist attitudes towards mostly working-class victims, a desire to protect the town's reputation, and lack of training and resources. Rotherham, where hundreds were abused by gangs of South Asian men, admitted suspect ethnicity in 67% of cases. So if we live in a country where something like this happens, and we're not even allowed to investigate it, or the police are so scared of being called racist, do you feel this woman deserves to be labelled as far right because she wants to raise awareness that we're not doing enough to tackle extremism? I think the story speaks for itself, but it's so tragic. When people say Tommy Robinson is racist, I also saw a tweet he retweeted of this seemingly lovely couple who are of Indian heritage, so not white, and he said, "What a lovely couple." So let's see what they had to say.
I was told by many people, I received calls, messages, Harban, don't go to this rally because these people hate you. They don't like you. They are hooligans, racists. But I told them, no, I don't believe you, and I don't believe this mainstream media.
And then we see what we see. We go, it's so humble. Every single person is very humble. They hug us, they shake a hand with us, and they say to us, thank you for coming. They are fighting for their own country, for own rights. They are not at all a racist, not even a single person. And we should have to stand with the Tommy Robinson. What you're doing for this country, hats off of you, I salute you.
And many of my Indian fellows who didn't make up yesterday because of the threat that you might be get attacked by these football hooligans, don't believe mainstream media. They are just brainwashing your mind. They are playing with your mind. If you want to live in this country peacefully, you want to raise your kids without any fear, any grooming fear, come to rally next time on 27th of July. And politicians are branding them as far-right activists or whatever. Shame on them.
Look at those white nationalists, huh? They seem really lovely. It's good to see people like that recognizing there may be an issue with cultural influences that we're not being more careful with coming in, but that it doesn't necessarily refer to race, because race is an immutable characteristic. You can have different values than the mainstream ones of your race. When you see any news article or report on a situation, and when the main criticism they have is just that the person is far right or racist, I would always approach it with skepticism, and the same on the other side. What I want to see is hard facts. I want to see this is what they believe in, and then we can make up our mind. Is that far right? And from this, I don't see that. Now I'd like to just touch on Sadiq Khan, who I've talked about before. Ultimately, Sadiq Khan is responsible for the Met Police in London, and people, just like Tommy Robinson and that whole crowd, feel like the police are not giving people equal treatment when it comes to the Muslim community.
Lee Anderson, the former deputy chair of the Conservative Party, said that you were under the control of Islamists. Your opponent, Susan Hall, dismissed your kind of complaints of Islamophobia, saying that they were quote unquote hurty words. How do you fare with this kind of criticism?
And it's really important it's called out for what it is. There should be no hierarchy when it comes to racism. What upsets me more than those words is, one, the British Prime Minister and his cabinet refused to call them out for as Islamophobic or racist or anti-Muslim. When Donald Trump was the president, the amount of hatred I received went up by 2,000%.
Who thinks that focusing on these labels gets us anywhere? Because all he wants is for people to agree, yes, it's Islamophobic, yes, it's racist. That doesn't actually refute the accusation. That doesn't refute the fact that you may be biased when it comes to the Muslim community, and that you're not doing enough to quell the extremism in protests. But that's why they do it, because if you can brand a label on it, then that silences people. No one's allowed to speak on it anymore. And why is saying that you as a mayor are too biased towards Islamists? That's his opinion. That's not looking down on all people from the Islam community. That's not saying that every person who is Muslim is an extremist, but it is saying we don't feel like you're being neutral, impartial enough. I think there's a worthy part to that claim because of what we've seen. I believe in freedom of speech. If people are there chanting death to Jews, let them, but they should be being condemned by far more many people, instead of the support for Hamas basically just continuing to grow and grow. And the fact that he makes this claim when Donald Trump got elected, my support went down, that's stupid. Like, is he dumb? How can he make the leap? His support went down because of Donald Trump. It doesn't make any sense. An American president gets elected, and even if those two things happened in tandem, it'd be very difficult to prove. Maybe your support has gone down because people don't support you as much, because they take issue. And someone like Donald Trump is actually saying, we do have a problem with immigration, and we do have a problem with some people entering our country who actually want to overthrow Western free values, right? And then let's look at his acceptance speech when he was recently re-elected as mayor in London.
Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, London.
Go and kill London! Go and kill London!
Can you please? The security will remove people who disrupt the speech. I made it very clear beforehand that was not to happen.
So yeah, it's pretty rude to do that. I wouldn't personally do that, but some people really, really don't like this guy. And I don't think it's because of racism. And on a side note, the woman next to him, Susan Hall, those were the two main candidates basically. And they were both absolutely shocking. Just the same as Rishi Sunak, Keir Starmer. It's so grim. This Susan Hall woman was a joke. She just came across like the most airy-fairy. Everything she said was, oh, well, it's in our manifesto. Now let's look at a clip of Nigel Farage and some thoughts he has on the Muslim community.
We have a growing number of young people in this country who do not subscribe to British values, in fact, loathe much of what we stand for.
Who are we talking about there?
Oh, I think we see them on the streets of London every Saturday.
What do they look like? Oh, we're talking about...
What do they look like?
Are we talking about Muslims here?
We are. And I'm afraid I found some of the recent surveys saying that 46% of British Muslims support Hamas.
Are you sure you want to make the blanket accusation that you've just made that Muslims are somehow less patriotic?
What a terrible interviewer. He says there are a proportion of people that are anti-British values, and he says that there's a percentage of people that apparently are pro-Hamas. But then immediately, do you want to make the blanket statement about all... Like, are you stupid? Because he knows. So sick of how we can't comment on effing anything without being told we're racist or that we're generalizing for an entire group. it just gets so old.
There is a growing population of people in this country, a lot of them very young, who have recently been voting for and electing candidates, right, up and down the country, in inner cities, who stand for a set of values that are completely, not only don't subscribe to our values, but in many cases are totally against our values. And
is this the thrust of the reform campaign, that actually immigration means that our values are threatened, and particularly we are unhappy about Muslims? Let me ask you to put yourself in the shoes of a British Muslim, and can you imagine how offensive that feels?
How many people from your community fail to speak English?
How many people?
Let me try and put this back on my experience. So I'm from the LGBT community or the gay community, and someone says there is a growing population of your community that is anti same-sex attraction, that is pro-abuse of children, that is pro-grooming kids into ideological beliefs. I have no problem as a gay man saying that's 100% true. And I'm not one of those people. And just because it exists, it doesn't generalize for all of us. So what is the issue? You know, we should be able to say within any culture, there's a small percentage or a certain percentage of people of which we don't agree with. Ugh.
From the West Indian community don't speak English.
We all speak English, but actually so do most Indian Muslims, so do pretty much all Pakistani Muslims in this country.
I can take you to streets in Oldham where virtually no one speaks English.
I've been there too.
Right?
But honestly, come on.
Honestly, come on. What does that add? And yeah, it is weird to have a whole community in this country that just don't speak the language. Do you guys think it's strange?
The point I'm making is
serious.
That I am not here to attack the religion of Islam, but I am here.
Well, you've just been doing it for 3 minutes.
No, I haven't. I'm telling you the alarming figures that have been coming out of these recent polls, particularly in the wake of what has happened on October the 7th and in Gaza, and we have a real problem here. No, actually, most people aren't yet affected by this because the areas with anti-British values tend to be geographically, at the moment, very tightly concentrated. But they do pose a problem.
But you're not resiling from blaming that community.
I'm blaming...
Get him off the air.
I'm blaming elements of that community. I'm not blaming them, I'm stating a fact. All I'm doing is stating a fact. No one else dares tell the truth about this. On the broader question, the biggest single problem this country faces is the population explosion. And it will not be debated in this election. Why? Because Labour started it and the Tories accelerated it.
It must be so frustrating to be someone who tries to just openly speak about reality and is just constantly told you're racist, you're a bigot. I have respect for certain politicians that are not conforming to being silenced. Everyone in Labour and Conservative are lost to the party lines. I'm going to be honest, guys, I'm becoming more and more convinced. Who would have known? I find it the most bizarre situation, but of Nigel Farage. I watched the election debate. He was the only person that talked about statistics, facts, honest truths, and solutions that I could actually visualize in terms of his policy. Could there be better policies? Maybe. He's the only person that I can see, okay, he's diagnosing the problem and he actually has an idea of how it will change. Whereas every other politician was just saying, yeah, we need more doctors, we need more nurses, we need more appointments. And the question is just, where's the money coming from? We need to grow the economy. Yeah. But something I really like about him is he recognizes that our National Health Service is broken and that the model no longer works. And I 100% agree. I've been a long-standing patient of the NHS with my autoimmune disease, with my chronic pain disorder, since I was 21 years old. And the amount of frustration I have faced with waiting lists, cancelled appointments, incompetency, problems with paperwork, the most basic things. And I've had enough of it. If I, as someone who's earning a certain amount, can contribute to an insurance scheme that puts more money into the health service, can pay people better, can collaborate with the private sector, and it means that I won't have to wait a year, then I'm going to want that because we pay for all sorts of shit. We pay for Netflix, we pay for pints at the pub. Our health is all we've got. So why not change the model? Everyone is just obsessed with protecting this national treasure. But as Nigel Farage said, people keep saying that the Tories ruined the NHS. Maybe they did, and that it's been underfunded. But the truth is that our percentage of our GDP spent on the NHS just keeps going up. So they're actually not being given less funding, they're being given more, but the system can't cope because our population is far bigger. We have far more lines of treatment and technology and skills that need to be fostered. This lady, very interesting, she was on trigonometry and she fled Islamic control, I think from Africa. And she doesn't seem like far right to me.
I think we're in a worse place today than we were in 2001. And so it is for me a bit of a nightmare that Europe is resembling the sorts of streets and places that I left. When you have a scenario where violent, radical white supremacists face off with radical Islamist jihadis, then it's not Europe anymore.
Yeah, she raises a great point because allowing this, not calling out the behavior, of course, is going to raise then an extremism on the other side. And that should be condemned as well. But when no moderate people are facing the issue, then you're going to get people like that. And that's why we need to try and just talk about it openly and stop being so effing offended. Let's take a moment to read out a few comments from my last podcast episode with Brad. It is from Find a Reason, Me7Go. Hello. I think the old term well-adjusted gay needs to be dusted off because you get two types of gays, the well-adjusted and the acting out post-trauma gays who are still dealing with psychological injuries in public. Basically sane versus tragic gays. While this dichotomy is probably oversimplified, I think you are onto something there because I've been thinking more and more about this gender movement, and I honestly feel like a lot of gay people subscribe to it because they feel hurt, understandably, by the complexities of finding their way in manhood or womanhood. Because when you grow up gay, you're usually very different to straight people, and that can pose a lot of challenges with understanding how you move through society as a man or as a woman and being gay, being gender non-conforming. And I do think a lot of us react to that by trying to overthrow the social norms of gender and try and advocate for this queer utopia where gender is sort of abolished and there's no difference between the sexes. But the reality is that there are differences. Most of the world is straight, and a lot of those straight people are quite happy with the differences and find comfort in traditional gender roles. So I think we should just be more confident that we're different and we don't need to turn everyone else. So many of us have been through trauma or abuse, bullying, even in this day and age. I don't believe that we can just say, no one cares anymore. There are lots of people growing up with families that are unaccepting, especially from religious communities. And that can cause a lot of pain. Next comment is from 150E Brithil. Hello. I really appreciate you both. Being gay has become more difficult and isolating within the community, especially when I hold some gender critical beliefs. I watch both your channels and it's relieving to know other gay men have similar beliefs. Thank you so much for saying that. And I call this out because whenever I get doubts about what I'm talking about and feel a little scared that I'm putting my opinions out there, dealing with backlash in my personal life or online, it's getting DMs or messages from people, especially gay people, saying, thank you so much for speaking on this. It's so lovely to see someone else who feels the way I feel. I feel really lonely. I can't talk about this in my friend group. I'm the only one who feels this way. And it's really messages like that that keep me going. And they really motivate me to keep going. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who said anything like that. Whether you're gay or trans people say the same things, which I really appreciate. Or straight, but for that matter, anyone. Next one is a review from Apple Podcasts, and it is 5 stars from GRJ. Hello. GRJ says, I found out about Jack from YouTube and found his videos insightful and interesting. Really happy to see him bringing interesting conversations onto a podcast and enjoyed listening and learning from the first episode. Pretty general, but thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay, guess who's back, everyone? It is Miss Bambie Thug, my favorite queer artist. Let's see what she has to say in this recent TikTok.
And like, you are non-binary, you are this non-binary representation. A lot of children are
looking at you and they're like, I see myself, I see a bit of me. How does that feel like being this representation, not just for Irish people, but for European kids who feel lost and confused and who are looking to you?
It feels very special to me. Growing up, I didn't really have representation for myself, so I think that that's amazing, and it's super heartwarming for the parents to be reaching out and you know, even so, about the children feeling like they have the ability to even come to their parents because they're seeing representation. You know, like I didn't come out till I was 28. Do you know what I mean? So it's encouraging, and I'm proud of all of them.
Oh my God. Disgusting Bambie Thug. Just everything about that video boils my blood. First of all, I'm sorry for the interviewer, but very awkward, no presence. Yeah, so for all the non-binary people in Ireland, you've become massive representation. She's saying, I had no representation growing up. Yeah, Bambie Thug, that's because your identity didn't exist. It didn't exist, non-binary. And the fact that you say, I didn't come out till I was 28, that is the most ridiculous statement about your made-up gender identity. And it is so effing insulting to my experience having to come out as a gay man as a teenager in Ireland. You are an appropriator, you're cringe, you're crisp. I'm not here for you. And what's a shame is that her outfit actually looks pretty wild, right? She could talk about that. But also she has zero presence. She's like, it's just great that the kids can see someone as a representative and go to their parents. Yeah, what's happening is kids are seeing it and you're giving them the idea that they're neither a man nor a woman, which is not possible. Not possible. So done with her. Now, this video from RuPaul's Drag Race really kicked up a fuss on Twitter. Okay, so this is a drag queen contestant who is... Her look is top surgery scars. Yeah, for anyone listening, right? She has top surgery scars with fake arms coming around her torso, cutting off the breast. There's blood. And then she's carrying a bag of her breasts, basically, after being removed. So a few things about this. First of all, I don't massively take issue with it because drag is art. It's a form of art. And in art, you'll get no end of expressions of anguish, of pain when it comes to relationships, when it comes to your body, when it comes to sexual assault. You'll get all sorts of expressions out there in art, right? So the fact that people are getting top surgery and there's a large portion of the world that agrees with it, I don't necessarily take issue with this person portraying it in art, right? I think the fact that it's so normalized is an issue, but I don't really think it's this person's fault because this person lives in a community where doing this is praised, and you can set up a GoFundMe page to get gender euphoria and cut off your breasts. So I don't really blame this person. I think people could chill out a bit on Twitter, but I do believe that it's more of a reason why drag isn't appropriate for kids by any means. I just don't think it's necessary. I think there's lots of other interesting forms of art and expression that kids can enjoy and gay kids can enjoy to explore their femininity or whatever. But the fact of the matter is a lot of kids do watch this show, and young women are influenced by this constantly, the social contagion of wanting your breasts cut off. And then the final point I have is it's very strange to me how this person is a trans man, so born female, transitioned to emulate being a male, cut off the breasts, and now is in RuPaul's Drag Race where she is dressing up as a woman. So it's just strange to me because would this not give this person dysphoria? And would they sort of find it very hard to embody being female? Because for gay men, they're usually naturally quite feminine. But for a trans man, they're supposed to be very masculine, right? So I think this would feel a bit alien to them. I don't know. That's what makes me think more and more. I think there is really a growing portion of gay people who are transitioning because there's a very clear social benefit to this when it comes to getting roles in TV shows, winning awards as the first trans person. I know of this actor who I saw in Legally Blonde in London, and back then he was identifying as they, them, and now he's transitioned and he's on Hollyoaks, a popular UK soap. So I do think that the benefit side is really urging people. Now, I don't know this person's story, but I do believe that along with the dysphoria or the distress and wanting to escape your body, I do believe that there's a growing incentive for adults to actually transition for career gains, for social capital, because people praise it, you know? All right, boys and girls, we have come to reacting to woke TikToks. And the first couple I have here are in relation to Israel-Palestine, because who can prove the left will eat its own more than Dylan Mulvaney?
Videos for Dylan Mulvaney. If you're not Dylan, feel free to stick around. You know, I've never really had faith in celebrities speaking on important things, especially when it comes to oppressed groups of people and us common folks. But I had faith in you. And I'm talking a lot of faith. You've gotten to where you are in your life and your career because of millions of people like me. Now, I can only speak for myself, but Dylan, I stood 10 toes to the ground for you. Not because you're trans, and not because we're part of the same community, but because you are a human. For the last 2 years, I've tried educating people on normalizing differences, because you as a human deserve to live your life as the person you are. The person you are. Apparently, none of us knew who that person was. Your silence and refusal to speak on what's happening has truly been heartbreaking. Multiple times a day, I go to your account hoping that you just talk and speak on this, because you know the type of influence that you have. And nobody can say that you don't do political things because you as a trans woman sat down and spoke with the President of the United States. When, to be quite honest, there were way more qualified trans people out there to do that, but because of your influence, you were chosen. Millions of people spoke up and defended you, and like I said in the beginning, we are a major reason as to why you are where you are now. And now, it's like we're nobodies. You don't just assuming that your ethics are the same as mine, because why would you only stick up for one oppressed group of people? I am beyond disappointed in you. I have no issues blocking celebrities. You were the one person that I had faith in, and your silence speaks volumes.
There is just so much wrong with this video and this deranged lesbian. Silence is violence is bullshit. No one should ever have to speak on any political issue to not be disowned by someone or labeled all sorts of things by a community. And it goes to show that if you subscribe to wokeism, you better get on that roller coaster long term. You're not getting off that ride, because if you fail to subscribe to one of the beliefs, you are booted off. You're dead. So that is why I'm so glad I'm not in this anymore, because no one is safe from cancellation. And the fact that this deranged lesbian thinks that by being trans, you automatically have to support Hamas and an Islamic State. You are crazy. I'm afraid to say that I'm diagnosing you as crazy, right? The fuck? She says, I go onto your page multiple times a day, like, has he talked about Palestine? Get a life. Are you serious? And a celebrity, if you want to call Dylan Mulvaney a celebrity, let's use that term, public figure, as if someone like that is going to care that some lesbian in some random state is saying, I'm going to block you, you've let me down. This whole fangirl of celebrities and then feeling like you need to hold them accountable is so weird. If anyone ever does that to me, I'm going to react to your TikTok. Not saying I'm a celebrity. Clearly not. What's coming? Okay. This next one is a woke TikToker who drives me the most up the wall.
Just so we are crystal clear, beyond a shadow of a doubt, at this point, no one is not informed enough to speak out. It's been 7 months. Instagram posts, infographics, journalists, horrific images, media coverage, TikTok accounts, viral videos, comments, tons of mutuals talking. No. Mm-mm. What they are is someone who doesn't care. Because it's been 7 months of a genocide that we have watched in 4K through our phones. The phone that most people that are content creators that are not informed enough make a living on. That same phone is where the movement has been happening. And this movement's not new. This movement is over 100 years old. You just don't care.
Bet he hasn't read that.
That's what it is. It's not that they weren't
There's no way
informed.
he's read
They just
that.
don't give a and them for it. Them for it.
This person is so slimy and gross. I just would love to see what it's like being in his circle, or I'm pretty sure he's an actor, so on stage. Do people who have to be around this guy think he's a head wreck? Because if you don't, you should. If he's even an iota of what he's like in real life as he is in those videos, I don't know how anyone could stand being in the same room as him, because everything about that video was disgusting. Like the facial expressions, the nails. Chill out. Not everyone is going to have the same opinions as you. And it's so fun to see them squirm when they start realizing that they cannot control people. Even Dylan Mulvaney, who's been your soldier in command when it comes to all of these ridiculous Days of Girlhood videos. And it is quite joyful to watch them panic and squirm, scream and shout, have a tantrum when someone they thought was on their side is not supporting a terrorist organization. God forbid. All of this, you just have to throw your hands up and think how funny it is, in a sense. Facebook messages, infographics, videos, comments. Yes, you can create a lot of content and you can put a lot of information out there, but just because you put more and more information out there does not mean it's more likely for someone to buy into it. I'm sorry, you can post all the videos you want, post all the comments you want. It does, the volume of them or the amount of channels there are, it does not mean that then everyone has to get on board with it. Otherwise, it would be even easier to manipulate people.
Sounds crazy, but trans women can produce milk to feed a baby. Here's how. Step 1, you must grow your coconuts. After about 3 to 5 years of estrogen, you will have fully functional milk ducts from which you can feed a baby. So once your coconuts are grown, it is time to start producing milk. Now, normally getting pregnant would trigger milk production, but since trans women can't get pregnant, we must do it another way. Turns out this is not all that difficult to do. Just add a few extra hormones and supplements and pump your coconuts regularly, and you will start producing milk. Now, I can already see the criticisms, the comments coming through. There's no way this milk is safe to drink or nutritious or healthy, but it is scientifically proven to be. The one caveat is that a trans woman might not be able to produce enough milk to feed the baby, but what is produced is healthy and can always be supplemented with formula. Ultimately, the act of feeding your child yourself is affirming to anyone, not just trans people. It also helps the child form a secure attachment to their parent. And for the record, I have no interest in having kids or producing milk. I just think it's cool that you can do this in the first place.
Yeah, you just have an interest in getting clicks because this person, you've all seen him before. He made one video where he started equating his gender surgery to different types of food. And then, of course, those have gone huge. So then he's just doubled, tripled, quadrupled down. because he goes to where the views are. And it's that simple. You should not be a parent if you are male and you are ingesting a whole bunch of chemicals and artificial hormones in order to produce a little bit of breast milk. That is not about the child. I will never be okay with this. I will never, ever, ever think this is appropriate. It is so disgusting. He is obviously an AGP, autogynephilic. Lots of them have fantasies about lactation. And I'm not here to say if you have that, you should be shamed. Everyone is into different things. Okay, it's very weird, but you do you. But if you involve a baby in that fetish, you are committing sexual assault on that baby. And a baby cannot consent to drinking milk out of a male. They can't. Even if you're not getting a kick out of it in that way. There's no long-term research on this. And even if it was 100% safe, just because something is possible doesn't mean we should do it. And for any trans woman out there doing this to affirm their identity, you're absolutely sick. Don't know if you know this gal, Naomi. I should probably drag her at some stage because she's all for that. He, she, whatever. Too far. Oh, God, I'm going to have to take a Xanax after all of that. But thank you, everyone, for being here. Please let me know in the comments. Remember, put a little jewel emoji if you don't know what to say, if you stuck with me this long. Rate me on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And with that said, I will see you all in the next episode. Bye.